All right, so let me set a few ground rules first, okay? I speak really fast, and I'm trying to make sure my accent is not too strong. If I go too fast, say it, because you're here to learn, and right now I'm not. All right, let's talk. Fuck off. All right, so that's a new pointer, not mine. I'm going to try this. All right, so there's something funny in our world, right? In our PHP world. We seem to have this problem at evaluating ourselves and making us look good. One thing I do is not many PHP conferences these days. I'm mostly going to, I'm involved a lot in R and Python and JavaScript and business in general. And I do a lot of those fancy, duddy conferences. And there's one constant reaction that I get from people when I tell them I'm involved in PHP. And it's, PHP, man, that's shit. Yeah. If you look at basic constructs of the language, sometimes it's not the cleanest language. It's not the most beautiful language. But I think it's important as PHP developers to give ourselves a pat on the back sometimes. And let's talk about why we're here. What makes us PHP developers, or what made us PHP developers? How did we become over 30% of the internet? So let's just talk about a few software, right? There's a lot of software that has made our past, and it gives us our reputation today. And I think that's, they're not the best quality software all the time, but they are making us who we are today, and they're making us better. For instance, let's just talk about Typo 3, amongst other. There's 285,000 known installation of Typo 3. Another number, 700,000 installs of Drupal that are known. That's not development install, that's production environments. Or let's go even WordPress. 75 million sites running WordPress that are known to the actual world. I mean, look at Jekyll. It's got 17 users. Sure, WordPress hasn't been always the sexiest project or the sexiest even anything. But I'll tell you one thing. A lot of people use it. A lot of people make money from it. A lot of people enjoy using it. A lot of people develop stuff. Hello, Niles. You're late. So, let's look. Yeah, I kind of have a problem today because I didn't expect to be in a church. This might cause problems for me because I'll probably end up in hell. But let's talk about it, all right? For instance, that's the known number of Magento shops that are actually selling on the internet. Or known, discoverable, right? So that's not too bad, but let's just imagine you have 130,000 shops running Magento, selling stuff. And let's say, on average, they would sell approximately $6,500 worth per month, or euros per month even. The money would look like this. And that's a lot of money. Do you remember that guy that dove from the sky? The one that jumped? What's his name again? Brown Targa or something? Felix. Let's call him Felix. Do you see that pile of money that's bigger than a human? And that's bigger than a car? If you stack this up, that's 91 kilometers high. He would die. Or if you look at it from another perspective, right? If you take those shops, it would pay the salary of 60,000 people on minimum wage. I mean, again, 6,500 is not much for an online shop. In fact, you'd probably be closing your doors if you were doing this full-time. And, sometimes, even though Magento's only been there for 2 years, 2 years and a half, 3 years, we're not talking about OS commerce here because I have personal limits. Here's another thing, right? Those metrics, I have new metrics, and I think those are going part of the reason why I'm going to go to hell tonight. Symfony is making people happy. And partly the reason why Symfony is making people happy is YouPorn. See, you're laughing, right? But YouPorn does have 1.5 million active users. And even more interesting, let's go into details a bit more, right? On average, there's about 110 million unique visits a month, and according to Alexa, users spend approximately 8 minutes on the site. Hold on. So let's assume that 3 minutes is to find your porn, and 5 minutes to watch the videos. So now what we do, right? Let's take 100 million views times 5 minutes. That's 3 billion minutes. Sorry, no. That's per day, so it's 100 million unique per day. So let's do this over a month, right? So you have 30 million per month, 30 million visits, or 3 billion visits per month, sorry. And then you multiply this by 5, which is the 5 minutes you would spend on the site. Per month, that's 15 billion minutes, or 29,000 human years. So think about this. If you think about 29,000 years ago, that's when the Homo neanderthalensis was extinct. It's kind of fun because, you know, the Neanderthals, they had this complex communication systems and they built complex tools. But was it really for that? Think about it, 29,000 years per month is spent watching porn, only on one side. I'm not talking about the other ones, I'm talking about the people that Symfony's making happy. Of course, there's always different things. Let's think about education, for instance. Another one that's very impressive, that's not Symfony related, is just PHP related, is Wikipedia. And you know, it's all about teaching billions of people. And surprisingly enough, underdeveloped countries or growing countries, they are using Wikipedia a lot to learn new things, to learn math, to learn engineering, to learn stats, to learn history. And you know, it is growing. That's right now Wikipedia has, hold on, I have my numbers here. So there's 15 billion monthly views, which means 11 million views per hour, which means 305 views per second to learn about Wikipedia, or to learn on Wikipedia, and it's growing. And that is why we should be proud of being PHP developers. Don't be ashamed next time someone says, PHP. Don't go, yeah, I know. Just go, yeah. And that's where you learn most of your stuff. Every time we have an argument, that's where you go. Right, I'm not saying it's because of PHP that Wikipedia would have happened, but it played a big role. It was there, it was ready, it was available for people to use. And that is because of every single person in the PHP community. No matter what you think, you are involved at some level. So where does this bring us? All this experience and wealth of immensely ugly code. It brings us to, now we got the users, we got the communities, we got works, we got jobs, we got salaries. It brings us to redefining the language, making it better, making it more like an engineering language rather than trying to hack some tiny things together. And it brings us to namespaces, for instance. Namespaces. So I have a few questions there. Who uses PHP 5.3 already? I mean, in production. Okay, that's fine. So I guess there's still half of the room that doesn't use PHP 5.3. I'm just going to go over a few features really briefly. So namespaces, they're not the solution to everything. Don't be scared. All they do is provide an extra organizational layer on top of your code. They allow you to make code that is easier to distribute. Closures and lambdas. Oh my God, we're just like JavaScript now. Yes. We've wanted this for so long. So lambdas, closures, people are kind of confused most of the times. It's fairly simple. A lambda is an anonymous function assigned to a variable. And, well, a closure is similar. However, it's enclosed within the environment it was defined in. So it looks like this. That's a closure. I don't remember what that slide was for, so I'll just skip it. So there are many other features in PHP 5.3, for instance, late static binding, new stuff in SPL, FAR, which I will get back to later, better garbage collection, dynamic statics, short ternaries that are absolutely unusable, and functors. The reason why I say they're unusable is because they don't really verify what you're doing, and then it produces warnings and errors. This might get fixed eventually. But then, you know what? PHP 5.3 has a lot more even. Oh god, a cloud. Oh, FPM, MySQL native driver. If you have a picture for 5.3, take it now, because that's a lot of stuff that you'll need to research on. And that's what I'm trying to provide you here today with, is it's not extreme content, but rather some stuff to think about, some stuff to research, and how to improve yourselves. So did you get it? There's a lot of stuff in 5.3, right? So now let's move on a little bit. Who's used 5.4? Ooh, we dropped a lot. So 5.4, we got amazing features such as, do you remember that? Do you remember that? Where is it going? Short syntax for arrays. It's cute. That's it. That's all I'm going to say. And there's function array dereferencing, just like JavaScript as well, and many other languages. Return an array, use it directly instead of assigning it to a variable. That's a lot easier. Then we've got traits. Traits, which is not appearing. Boom. So traits also, again, they're not your solution to everything. Think of them as code templates. They're effectively copy-paste at the engine level, so it's fairly fast. So here's an example of traits. Ignore this. I'm going to get back to this after. So basically, you would define your trait just like a class, use it, and then, for instance, when you instantiate your new SymfonyLive class, you get to access the trait directly. So you can you can use many traits, you can reuse your code easily, and it's going to make a hell of a mess in the future. Another thing, session handler. Who's ever written a session handler in PHP? Session set, session open, session this, session that, You end up with 12,000 functions, and it's a mess. Now you can access this through an object-oriented model, which is pretty awesome. But, PHP 4 is not only traits and arrays, it's also... Sorry, that's not my pointer. I'm getting used to this. Indirect method calls. So you can define an array and run functions on the members of those arrays. I'm not sure what's the use for this, but I'm sure someone's going to find an awesome way and release a software that's going to be used by billions of people. So you can also do member access upon instantiation. What does that mean? Wrap your stuff around parents, call your variable, or your function, or your method, and you're happy. Then we also have support for enclosures, which was kind of an issue in 5.3 because it really wasn't there. But now let's go even further. God, more. Oh, 5.5, which is in release candidate now. And I'm going to say this to you. Every single person in this room, go and test it. Because if PHP 5.4 is released, 5.5 is released, and there's a bug, every single one of you is responsible for it. This is code written by the community, and it has to be tested by people that actually use it. Not by a set of scripts, because humans always have a tendency of breaking tests for some reason. I don't know why. I mean, computers are smarter than humans. But yeah, 5.5 has a new password hashing API, which provides you with a lot. Just go look it up. There's so much that you can do with it. And one of the new things is PBKBBF2, which allows you to salt and not differentiate. Anyways, better salts, better ways to store passwords, more secure. And that's something I've been using in Django, for instance, for at least a year. The other one is finally we can do an empty on a function. Instead of returning an error now, it's going to do the same thing as if you were to do this, which is, it's cute, it's useful. And then this one I've been annoyed with for a few years. You couldn't do this before. Now you can. So you can do many new things that are very, again, I think that's all going to be part of a new software that's going to be released eventually. That's going to be absolutely epic. Here's a feature that's under discussion that I would personally love to see. They're property getters and setters. So basically you would define a variable just like the _get_set, but you can define them really easily, and you can define them as write only, read only, various So basically what you would do with this is something like that, where you would do object_conf, which would return this. So generators. Here's a question again. Who's ever used iterators? And there's a reason for that. In fact, I'm going to give you a little anecdote here. If If you've ever met Marcus Borger, who pretty much brought the whole concept of SPL and proper iterators to PHP, he used to give this talk about iterators, and he was saying the word iterators so many times that we actually made a drinking game out of it. Like to use a recursive directory iterator, you need to do this and that and that. Defining an iterator is immensely complex, or not complex, it's just long and it's a lot of work. With yield, it brings the whole concept of iterators and making it a lot easier to use. And finally, that's what it looks like. So finally is pretty much a code block that's executed at the end of your error handling. So, is it big enough? It's finally there. So smaller things, right? Let's talk about Fabien's, Silex framework. No, I don't mean that. Let's talk about new things in 5.5 that are not going to be in the limelight because they're not as fancy and they're not as shiny as other things, as such as finally and as such as the password API. So PCRE doesn't have an E modifier at the end anymore. It's gone. ICU has a bunch of new changes. MySQLi has SHA-256 authentication support. Boolval, which again is awesome. It does the exact same thing as bool, but it's used for consistency because we already have strval, we have intval, and honestly, if you underestimate consistency, you're making a big fucking mistake because it is. How many times have you taken someone else's code and went like, that happens. So for instance, assert, the method assert or the function assert, you can pass a custom message as an argument. But all of this is not about only features. It's what's happening in the PHP world. What's changing that's making the language better? Sure, developing features is easy, even though you have millions of users and billions of users. But for instance, is Pierre here? Make a sound. Nope, he's not here. Anyways, in PHP, the whole concept of submitting a new function, that was always kind of vetoed by one dictator. Whereas now there's a release process. There's a whole RFC that you can ask for something. You can describe what you need. You can describe how it's going to be done. You can submit a patch, and people vote on it instead of having one person deciding what's going to be the future. So we also have Git. Who uses Git, by the way? I don't know who's laughing because half the room didn't raise their hands. And it makes me cry. Other things we have a web server. Anyone use the web server in PHP? Well, you have a whole 9 person, or 9 people in this case. But see, the web server is not something you're going to run in production. But again, it's all about allowing you to prototype stuff. It's all about allowing you to develop software faster. This way you don't need to set up a new vhost or a new config file for Nginx. You don't need to do anything. You can just run your thing right from the command line, test your code, and then you can deploy properly. And I think that's pretty cool. And to us, we can ask ourselves, what about all those new features? What does it mean? What are we going to do? Where are we going with this? And in reality, what it means is stronger engineering. It's not only for hacking spider scripts and going to crawling Google and trying to find out the links. Now you can actually develop very strong, very solid PHP applications, not only scripts, apps, proper apps. And honestly, YouPorn is a pretty good example. But for stronger engineering, it's not only about code. There's so much more than code when it comes to engineering. And, all those new features, they allow us to develop a better language. For instance, PHP Unit, which, in Germany, surely there's someone who's a contributor to PHP Unit. No? That's awesome. Well, no more water. I'll just drink this. So Xdebug, again, if you've ever debugged PHP code, or no, actually, even better, if you've ever used any other language, you know how much Xdebug is awesome. Python has a few things they're trying to get there, and Xdebug turned 10 years anyways this year. So, as a community, as I said, we don't pat ourselves on the back enough, right? And we have a lot of really amazing frameworks that are coming up, one of which is Symfony, of course. So, I would like to ask the contributors, anyone who's ever contributed to Symfony, to get up, stand up. Yeah, that's right, you as well. So German. All right, let's do it in silence then. It's a church after all, right? All right, can we at least get a round of applause for the Symfony guys? Come on now, that's enough. I'm just kidding. The funny thing is, the Symfony guys bring us a lot of innovations. And one thing I like to say is, they're a bunch of dicks. Sorry, I don't mean the Symfony guys. I mean the innovations that they bring us, for instance, was dependency injection containers. And I think they're probably the first serious framework to bring it to the PHP world. I mean, I've used them in Java and Hibernate in Spring, and I tore my eyes apart. And now it's great to see them in PHP. Zen Framework. I know it's a Symfony conference. Who's used Zen Framework, though? Almost as many people have used Zen Framework than PHP 5.4. So I would go for a round of applause, but it's not quite all right. Because it's SymfonyLive and everything, So Lithium. Lithium. Here's an framework. Actually, you know what? You've contributed to Zen Framework, right? Yes. Get up. Finally, someone who gets up. Give him a round of applause as well. Because you might not know it, even though Zen Framework is not your framework, it is contributing to your framework. And I'll explain this just a little later. So Lithium is a very, very opinionated framework. And I'm not saying go use it, but they've really tried redefining the language. And what they're doing is bringing a breath of fresh air to the PHP world. And it's awesome because they're taking concepts from Node.js, they're taking concepts from various places, they're trying a different type of programming pattern. And, those guys are pretty awesome. So, there's even a Gavi. It's got 1 user and he's right there. But take a look because, it's not only about your code base. It's about what other people are doing. How are they doing it? Try to better yourself all the time. And if you look at different perspectives, you are bound to open more doors in your brain. So another thing I like is Silex. Silex, which I've seen Fabian somewhere and Igor. I heard a sound. That's good. I call it the largest micro framework because it's very small, but it's got some dependencies, which is awesome. Could we also have a round of applause for those guys? Because strangely enough, Silex has created a shitstorm in the PHP worlds of frameworks. All about micro framework. If you Google for PHP micro frameworks now, there's at least 6 million. And I think that's awesome. It's all about bringing new ideas and trying new things. And for instance, I'm the president of the Bear project, but honestly, when shit is starting to change, I love that. And Composer, for instance, which is the new PHP package manager, Niles over there, which I almost pointed in the eye. Composer took a very different approach, right? In Pair, we started in a very kind of CPAN way where everyone could submit their packages and there was no kind of verification or peer reviews. And then people started complaining about the lack of quality when it grew. Then we implemented very strict peer review. When I'm not in Germany, I usually say Nazi-like peer reviews. Don't know if it works here. But think about this. Composer, in the last month, has moved from 5 million downloads to 6 million downloads. And the project is about a year old. That's 1 million more users in a month. Think about this. That's fucking amazing. And you know that. That's it? No, I'm just kidding. I'm a bit disappointed because for my day job, right, what I do is pretty much behavioral economics and oh, can you hear me still? And forecasting of customer growth. And as I said, I don't do much PHP these days. All I do is work with statistical models and R and Python. But I told Niles, can you hook me up with your database? I'm going to make some forecasts of packages that are upcoming and new things. And I didn't. So keep an eye on the bundle of links I give at the end, because I'm going to try to still do those forecasts of which packages are going to be more likely to grow and which categories of packages. And it kind of gives you an idea of the trend of our industry, which is really awesome. But then what's also interesting is when you start comparing this with other communities, and then you realize, wait, we're not doing the same thing. And the only conclusion I can actually come up with is because we're used in production. And, I think that's kind of cool. This one I didn't have initially. It's easy publish, but the guys are here, and they've been around the PHP world forever as well. So you know the drill now. Let's do this again. That's the last one now, don't worry. So there's more, right, to PHP and testing, and there's a lot of external projects. And being in Berlin, I thought it would be very interesting to mention. Let's see if anyone recognizes this now. Yeah. Travis CI, continuous integration tool, extremely useful to both your business needs and your personal needs and your community first and foremost. Another one, let's talk about this. Node.js. Oh my God, dare I mention that. Node.js again. I have personal issues with certain implementations of the engine, or how the engine's implemented, but that's fine. Again, what it does is it brings you new concepts. And one old concept it brings you back is how to develop sockets. And if anyone tells you, oh, Node.js is great because you can write front-end and back-end code, just tell them to take their hands off their ass, because it is not the same. But it has a lot of other things that can be very interesting. And for instance, Igor developed nodephp.org, which, it kind of tries to make an evented PHP framework. It seems to be very popular. I don't know if Igor will be able to talk about this later on, maybe. But yeah, it's just bringing all this capability, or all the capabilities of Node.js to PHP, and reusing all this immense amount of code that already exists. So on the other hand, what is there? There's a bunch of things changing in our world, right? And if you remember, a few years back, we would have dedicated servers. It would kind of be normal for us to have dedicated servers. Then we moved to VPSs, and we'd be like, oh, sweet, it's not really dedicated, we pay less. And now we're going to this whole kind of cloud providers and such. And by the way, I am a founder of a cloud platform as a service, so I'm just not going to do a sales pitch. I really hate sales pitches. But one thing that's changing is LAMP. The concept of LAMP itself is changing a lot. And I was talking to Pierre earlier, even who was talking about IIS. And IIS 8 is apparently really fast. What I usually say is called LNNP, which is Linux, Nginx, NoSQL, and PHP FPM. Not PHP, PHP FPM, which is the fast CGI interpreter, which is a lot faster. Here's another thing that changes. And Rasmus said that one day. For those who don't know Rasmus, he's pretty much a guy who invented PHP. Does anyone not know Rasmus? Okay, that's good. So Rasmus is very opinionated about, well, he was anyways, I don't know now, about standards. So at PHP Tech about 2-3 years ago, Matthew Weir-Finney from Zen Framework and Travis Weisgood, who's no longer in PHP, I think, or involved with PHP, and we said, do you know what would be cool is to create some sort of standards for all the projects. So what we did is we got people from pretty much all the bigger projects, Symfony, we got them from Cake back then, which has changed, and created the Framework Interoperability Group. If I have a chance to go see it, the reason why you might be able to read both Zen Framework code and Symfony code is because they kind of adhere to those standards, which is awesome. And, Rasmus said it. He will care about standards when they start happening, and they are happening now. Where does that leave us? Evolution. I have this slide to talk about the evolution of our platforms and how we deploy code and, the platforms and whatnot, but I'm scared shitless to talk about evolution in the church. So I'm just going to skip it. So I'm one of the founders of Orchestra, which is a PHP platform which has been acquired by Engineered. But it's not about talking about my company. It's about platforms in general for PHP, right? What does the cloud allow you to do? And there's a lot of definitions of the cloud. And one of them is to allow you to deploy code easily. You don't need to FTP into servers anymore. You don't need to go and change configurations. In theory, someone should be able to provide you with this stuff. Someone who's actually done this before. Someone who's scaled websites. Someone who's scaled web apps. by the millions, by the billions. And if you're looking for a PaaS provider or a cloud service provider, that's what you should be looking for. And, it allows you to have better quality control as well. A PaaS provider, in my opinion, should provide you with the tools to integrate directly with your continuous integration. You shouldn't be deploying if your tests don't pass, and so on and so on. So that's what it looks like. It's not a sales pitch, yada, yada, yada. Let's move on. But more importantly, what the cloud should provide you with and what it should bring to you is focus in your work. We're developers, right? And what do we like doing is changing, trying new things. We don't always use them in production, but a good example is I was talking to someone earlier who has a large TV site running on Symfony 1.4, and he was scared of upgrading. And I get it. If you've ever run a website that actually has visitors, you don't want to upgrade once it runs. But as developers, we do like those shiny things, and we do like modern things, right? And we do like modern architectures, such as, Share Nothing, which has been around forever, but never used by anyone, because people still put their MySQL servers in the same box. They still use one server to run PHP, to run Apache, to use MySQL, Redis, Memcache, and everything. And as soon as one of those services start overloading your box and start overusing your resources, you're fucked. And that sucks, because now you can't connect to one machine that does everything. And the cloud should provide you with a way to get over this. And so let's go back to shiny objects. Because, I like shiny objects. And that's a quote I actually really like called, "Desire and hope will push us toward the future." And I have a theory wherein I say, click, click. That's what I say. So anything that can be used should be tried, right? And it seems very kind of vague to say. But if you're looking for a PaaS provider, or if you're looking for any solution, it should allow you to try things, It should allow you to test rapidly, but also fail rapidly. And when I mean fail, I don't mean fail your business. I don't mean fail in your endeavor. What I mean is you want to try React, you want to try Python, or you want to try Redis even. But you realize that your payload is actually smaller than 12 KB, and it would be faster on Memcached. But you still want to try Redis because you have a set of data that you want to iterate through. You want to try MongoDB because that's what all the cool kids are talking about. Then your PaaS provider should be able to provide you with this. More importantly, it should provide you with 2 databases so you don't lose your database. And then CouchDB, for instance, which is, I guess, is it big in Berlin? It's huge. I love Germans. You're so expressive. But yeah, CouchDB from Jan Leonhard, one of our Berliners, favorite Berliners. It's a different type of database. Their replication model is absolutely amazing, and it's super easy to use. If you've ever configured a MySQL slave setup, you will appreciate CouchDB like you have no idea. React, here's another funny thing. React, another storage engine. Really clever, really strong. Again, written in Erlang, not unlike CouchDB. And it's a bitch to set up. So your providers, your future things, when you start looking at what's after MySQL, what's after Postgres, I have different needs, I'm adapting, I'm evolving, what do I use? Look at different things. Look at Cloudflare, for instance. If you've ever heard of Cloudflare, they provide you with like DNS security, which you can see real-time kind of threats being blocked and whatnot. It's pretty fucking awesome. And do you use Ruby? Do you use Python? If you do, well, such is life. Get over it. God damn. Ooh. So let's reflect a little bit. All right, that's the last part of the talk. It's got a few slides, not too many, just about 10. I usually say something. As developers, we have a God complex. We think that our technology is better than our users. And I'm going to say this now. The reason why I say David Stockholm Syndrome is because I usually say this and it pisses off all the developers in the room. And before I get to the next slide, just remember this, right? Your users are worth a lot more than your technology. In between communities, we need to start interacting together. We need to start thinking. We need to start sharing technologies. We need to start, actually working together. Even in the PHP world, most projects don't talk to each other. Sure, the leaders do, because we always see each other at every single conference, But as developers, feel free to go see someone in Zen Framework. And you know what? Don't bitch. You know, hiding behind a keyboard on Hacker News is very easy. It's very detrimental to the whole community. And when I said earlier that someone that uses, say, Lithium will affect your framework, the reason I'm saying this is they will start talking about PHP. They will write better test engines or better testing tools, better testing suites. They might bring different paradigms that you need to learn about. Or, even more importantly, they might start contributing to the standards. The standards group that I was talking about earlier, the FIG. And this is going to reflect on you. So, for a minute, think about it. And, you know, consider this. There are other technologies. It's not because you're using PHP for one thing that you have to use it for everything. On the other hand, it doesn't mean that you don't have to. So one thing I usually ask developers a lot, before your next project, don't work on another framework. Just take your hands away from the keyboard. Just think. Think about other things. Don't think only about technology. Try to look at different things. For instance, the YouPorn example with 29,000 years. You know, you don't think about the Neanderthals when you look at YouPorn. Even though they died. Or extincted. So, you know, learn a different language even. It might provide you with new ideas that you will bring back to the PHP world. For instance, Ruby has something called RESC, which is like a job worker running on Redis that is absolutely terrible. Python did it. They saw RESC and they were like, we need to do this better. I'd love to see this in PHP, for instance. But we could do it with ZeroMQ or Redis even. And, you know, we're providing our developers as developers, we're providing other developers with new ideas, with a fresh breath. Yeah, community. Oh yeah, that's the last interesting slide. Who's ever contributed to a project, any project? All right. For all of those that didn't raise their hands, here's a question for you. What's contributing to you? Yeah, no, I don't think that's right. Really? Okay. So, to me, contributing is a lot more than writing only code. You're writing an app in Symfony 2. There's a bug. Reporting that bug is contributing. Attending a user group, sure, that's contributing. Writing documentation, writing a blog post that is not inflammatory, that's contributing. Being respectful to any other person in any other community, that's contributing to your language. When you have people saying, PHP, if you explain to them, no, look at all those new features we have, that's contributing. Now, I'm going to ask again, who's ever contributed to PHP? Yeah, almost twice as much, that's all right. So anyways, if you're interested in links, I have a bunch of links in that bundle. It has stats and the PHP RFCs. It has change logs for PHP 5.5. It has, I think my slides are in there somewhere. And be careful because it has links not to YouPorn, but stats related to YouPorn. If you're interested into like the stats for Wikipedia, the Wikimedia Foundation, you can find them there. You can find them there as well. And on this, what I'd like to do is for everyone to give a really, really good round of applause, not a German round of applause, a good one, to our organizers for having, the organizers and Fabian for Symfony and organizing SymfonyLive.